hearing, and without objection, so ordered. I ask unanimous consent that members not on the subcommittee be permitted to sit with the subcommittee at today's hearing and ask questions. Without objection, so ordered. It is the responsibility of each member seeking recognition to unmute their microphone to speak and mute, unmute, and mute again when not speaking when you're finished. To avoid any inadvertent background noise, I request that every member keep their microphone muted when not seeking recognition to speak. Should I hear any inadvertent noise, any background noise, I will request that members please mute their microphone. Finally, to insert a document to the record, please have your staff email it to documentsti@mail.house.gov. Now for my opening statement about today's hearing, which has been coming for a long time. This is our first hearing in about 10 years on emerging and persistent threats to our water and how these threats affect human health and the health of our communities and of our environment. In that time, there have been many studies conducted, some very old, and new science developed on tracking and treating such contamination. I am glad to have a panel of experts in front of us, well, before us on the Zoom, to catch us up on latest information. Today, we know more about the impacts of contaminants on human health, aquatic species, and the environment. However, there remain many gaps in our understanding. At this hearing, we will explore some of the impacts of these contaminants and the roles that federal and the state governments should plan to protect our health and the health of our water resources. Water quality and protection of our surface water resources is not a partisan issue. The Clean Water Act was passed with overwhelming bipartisan support, enough to override a presidential veto. I know that the goals of the act are something we can all agree on, even today. To ensure water quality for communities across the nation, we must rely on two separate but very important elements. One, depth of knowledge on the threats to quality and the various tools with which to manage those threats. But also important is continued diligence, research into new and emerging contaminants. During the last administration, we saw unprecedented steps to critically weaken both of these initiatives. The last administration needlessly weakened Clean Water Act provisions over rivers, our streams, our wetlands that provide drinking water to over 117 million Americans. But fortunately for all Americans, the legal action has now been thrown out by the courts. The last administration also slowed water quality enforcement efforts to a standstill, imposing political influences on decisions when or if to enforce the law. Worse still, the last administration, EPA actively tried to undermine and silence the scientific and technical expertise and the effectiveness of the agency, putting all of our communities at risk. The current administration has started to restore the critical mission of EPA, which is to protect human health and the environment. However, there is a lot of work to be done to correct previous inadequacies and get our research and water quality management back on track. We must protect our most vulnerable communities from unfettered pollution and the burden of forever chemicals and the harmful contaminants. Many of the discharges being discussed today come at an extremely high cost to the health of humans and our environment. The cost to the local communities is very high cost to the local water treatment plants, forced to bear the cost of removal, that is the taxpayer. Simply put, we cannot allow upstream polluters to introduce dangerous pollutants into our waterways at the cost of everyday citizens and businesses. We can't tolerate polluter giveaways and corporate profits at the expense of our own environment. Water is critical, too essential to human life to be threatened by anywhere or anyone. I do look forward to hearing from a highly esteemed panel on the biggest threats to our water quality and what additional tools we can provide to eliminate these threats. We must be vigilant in protecting our water, including learning current and future threats to human health and the environment, ensuring we meet all these challenges to clean water for all. At this time, I'd like to yield to my colleague, my good friend, Mr. Rouser, for his statement or any thoughts he may have.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate